Good afternoon.
Hello.
Welcome in. We are privileged and it is our pleasure to be with you this afternoon on Thursday. Again, I almost said this morning,
Yep.
every week. Anyway,
We're coming to you live from Petra. This is our background picture.
what's Petra?
Petra, well, I actually know more about it in the Indiana Jones universe than in reality. It's a location, or it's a really ornate stone temple in Syria.
Okay.
It's just carved into a cliff.
Oh,
And it's where they find the Holy Grail.
I think I'm remembering something that this is in. It's in Transformers, and they find the Matrix in Transformers 2 in there. And it's like this thing that revives Transformers.
You remember it being in the Transformers, but not Indiana Jones?
No, because I don't watch that Indiana Jones as often as I watch the other Indiana Jones movies. So I watch Raiders of the Lost Ark all the time.
Uh-huh.
It's like my favorite one. So
Yeah, well, it's the best one.
Yeah. And
But then next is The Last Crusade.
next is Temple of Doom.
No, next in terms of quality.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The
Sure.
Last Crusade is not far behind Raiders of the Lost Ark, in
Yeah.
my humble opinion.
Which those two, the middle two, actually, I usually just watch Raiders of the Lost Ark because it's the most fun one to me.
Turns out that Nazis are an essential element for a good Indiana Jones movie, because the good ones have them and the bad ones don't.
Nazis as enemies in any movie kind of makes the movie better, I feel like.
It makes it simpler.
Yeah, because
you're never rooting for the other guy.
No.
There's no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway.
Getting back on track here. I am Pastor Jack, and this is
Pastor Matt,
and I'm the associate minister here. He's a senior minister, so he's my boss. You know, he gets to tell me what to do, and I listen to him. Typically, sometimes, Anyway, but how this is going to work? This is deleted scenes. We kind of go through some different questions from the sermon this most recent Sunday, which was on Simon the Pharisee. He was the what did you call him? The secret witness, right?
the surprise witness.
Surprise witness.
Surprise.
I knew it started with an S. The surprise witness, which you guys had been kept waiting for several weeks, unintentionally, by the way, to find out who he was. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of get into the story a little bit more and kind of into the sermon a little bit more. And the really cool thing about this and being able to live stream on, well, I guess Facebook and YouTube this time, is that you can ask your questions in the comment section for Pastor Matt, and he'll answer them, and we'll get to those as soon as we can.
And I will be monitoring the YouTubes, because we're on YouTube Live now too. So I'll monitor the YouTubes, and you will monitor the Facebooks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to be doing this afternoon. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. My first one for you, Pastor Matt, has to do with the perfume that the woman washes, the sinful woman washes Jesus' feet with. Is there any significance behind that perfume?
So, kind of. It depends on how you interpret the story, because this story is each of the Gospels tell a story of a woman washing Jesus' feet. Mm-hmm. However, in Matthew, Mark, and John, that story takes place in Bethany as part of Jesus, close to Passion Week, or in Passion Week, so close to the death and resurrection of Jesus. And in that story, the perfume has a lot to do with the fact that he's being anointed a king and that he's being prepared for burial. That's what the connection Jesus makes out of it. So the question is this story in Luke the same story, just Luke's version of it put in a different place, or is it a different story? Personally, I and the scholars that I have read have argued that this is actually a different story, in which case the perfume doesn't have those meanings. What it probably just means is it's something expensive and really over the. It's like, okay, so the reason you wash your feet is because you spent all day in sandals. Washing your feet with water would be a good way to make them a little less stinky. Perfume would be like the absolute guaranteed top shelf solution. And so I think what the point is that Simon didn't even give him water, and she just got the most expensive thing she possibly could. So I think it's a way of communicating just how grateful she was.
Sure. Is there any truth in the I've heard that it was worth about a year's wages, the perfume was. And also an alabaster jar is like you break it and you have to use all of it and you can't go back from that.
That's the other story.
Oh, okay.
Because Judas makes a comment about how much the perfume is worth. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that's when it talks about being an alabaster jar. They really emphasize how expensive it is to anoint Jesus in that story. And Jesus actually talks about that. In this story, he doesn't really talk about that part, sure. Which is part of the reason why I think it's a different story. Yeah. Also, Simon the leper and Simon the other story takes place in Simon the leper's house. And Simon the leper and Simon the Pharisee are probably not the same Simon. There are Simon was the most common name in the Palestine at the time, and there are 9 Simons in the New Testament. Right. Just lousy with Simons.
Sure. Yes. Yep. Simon's all over the place.
Yep.
So my next question kind of comes from this point that you made where Simon found his self-worth in comparing his righteousness to other people. And I just want to ask, considering that he's a Pharisee, is this kind of a fault of the Jewish law, or is this more a fault of humanity in general?
I think that this is a fault of humanity in general because it happens whether you have the law or not. We compare to each other and we compete with each other and we want to be better than each other. I mean, it goes back in the Old Testament, it goes back to Cain and Abel. They didn't really have the law and they were still competing with each other, or at least Cain was competing with Abel. And these actually, this tendency goes back to 2 of the 7 deadly sins. About a year ago, we did a series on the 7 deadly sins, and this comparison, Simon, you could probably diagnose with vainglory, which means really, really caring about what people think of you, and you could probably also diagnose him with envy, which often goes with vainglory. And envy is the comparison, the wanting to be better than other people, and so those are just innate sinful patterns that I think all humans are tempted toward. And the law just is whatever, it's the currency that he's using to compare himself. It's kind of like, you can be greedy, whether it's dollars or British pounds or euros, the currency doesn't matter. It's the same pattern. In this case, I think the law is just the currency he's using.
Yeah, definitely. So the next point that I kind of pulled a question from is this idea that Jesus actually agreed with Simon's kind of, what Simon was reading in the situation, how he compared himself to the woman. And so I just want to ask, are there instances where we may be right, but our motives are maybe misguided and might need a redirection in how we look at the situation?
I think that very often human beings we're given a sense of right and wrong by God, which often gets warped, but we do often have a sense of, I think it's right to say, it's worse to murder than to cheat on a test. That's just, I don't know how you don't say that. And so we often, it's important for us to have that moral sense to be able to recognize some things are worse than others, and some things are more damaging to people than others, and we need to, really avoid those really damaging things. We need to avoid all sin, but I think we have an accurate sense very often. But the problem is we don't internalize it properly. We use it, we abuse that knowledge. And so, like Simon, he's known all his life it is bad to do the kinds of sins that this woman was apparently doing. But he just misuses that knowledge to puff himself up and to feel better than her, and just to say, well, I can coast because I didn't do anything that bad. And it doesn't end up helping him. It doesn't actually make him a better person. Or it doesn't prepare him to recognize the Messiah when he's standing right in front of him. I think we often misuse the knowledge that we have because we want to put ourselves first.
Yeah. So kind of jumping off that a little bit and talking about this this point where you talk about how Jesus wanted to shift Simon's focus to the question that he never asked. I wanted to ask what might be a question or maybe some questions in our lives that we never asked that maybe Jesus would try to redirect us into actually asking.
I think one of the questions that I often fail to ask is, why is the person acting that way? Why is a person behaving in a particular way? Which I guess is the same question as Simon, but there are other possible answers. Mm-hmm. Simon sees a woman acting joyous and bold, and he misses the fact that she is forgiven. Sometimes I will just assume that there is no possible explanation. Okay, all right, I have a great example of this.
Sure.
My father-in-law was in town over the weekend, and we stopped at the hardware store. And when we got there, there was a car parked right in front of the entrance to Lowe's, right there. And we pulled up, and I was like, there's nobody in there. Like, it is an unoccupied vehicle right at the entrance. So he and I were talking about that as we went into Lowe's, and I forget exactly what we said, but we both said basically the same thing. Like I know in my head there is no good reason for that. Oh, I remember. But my father-in-law said, but as soon as I say something, I know some incredibly old person is going to come out who can barely walk, and maybe they were confused and didn't know where to park or something like that. There's going to be some good reason for it. And we were just talking about how often that happens, that I just judge someone and say, there's no good explanation for that behavior. They're clearly just wrong, just stupid, just ridiculous. And then I find out later, oh no, there was a pretty tragic reason or a pretty good reason for what they were doing. And so I think we often don't ask, I personally often don't ask the question, why would they act like that? I just focus on this thing is wrong to me. And that background information can be really important.
Sure, yeah. So don't forget, you can comment any questions that you have for Pastor Matt in either the Facebook comment section or the YouTube comment section, and we will get those questions answered. So my next question is about Simon himself. You kind of mentioned a little bit of what Simon's changed life looks like in a way, but do we know anything else about Simon after this event happens?
We can infer that, so he had this encounter with Jesus, and Luke only tells us to the end of that conversation. So we don't know what was the immediate aftermath. He could have been changed right then. Are we choppy?
Possibly.
He could have changed in that moment and decided to follow Jesus. It could have been that could have been the beginning of a process where he eventually began following Jesus loyally, maybe after the resurrection. But at some point he started following Jesus, and he spent considerable time in the oh yeah, we're having troubles with the computer. Well, we'll just keep going. He spent considerable time with the Jewish communities probably around Israel. And so that's all we can really tell, is that he was part of the Jewish communities around Israel.
Sure. So again, I just want to remind you that you can comment any questions that you might have for Pastor Matt. So the next question kind of comes from the Encountering Jesus section, which is kind of the more application type section, it seems, to us and how it relates to us. But why is it so hard for us to accept the fact that any and all sins can be forgiven?
I think that I'm closing programs to make sure that my computer's working well. So I am engaging. I think that part of the reason it's we talked about forgiving loans and how people don't want to forgive loans because that's their money. Yeah. When I give someone a loan, in a way I'm investing in them, and if I forgive that loan, I'm just losing the investment. So I have money in this. Well, a lot of people we invest ourselves in our reputation. For Simon, he spent a long time trying to make sure that he was more moral than this other woman, and to let go of all of that is like losing an investment. And so I think that that's probably why we're really resistant to it.
Yeah.
Because if I worked hard to have the reputation, to have the moral status that I have, and I want that to matter. Mm-hmm. So, and that's actually something that we're going to talk about in this next sermon when we talk about Joanna, because we're going to look at the parable of the prodigal son, mm-hmm. and we're going to focus in on the other brother.
Yeah.
And that's really his hang up. Mm-hmm. Is I've been loyal. I didn't go off and squander money. So where's my reward?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that as you were kind of talking through that idea, of I worked hard for something, and it's just kind of human nature to say if I worked hard for something and then someone else didn't, and they just receive what I'm receiving as well, then it gets really difficult. But looking at it from the other angle and seeing how beautiful that is and how amazing Jesus is for doing that, then that just adds even more beauty to it, in my opinion. So my last kind of on-topic question here for you, it has to do with your quest that you talked about being on to kind of read the Bible without any filters and see, read it for what it says and see what Jesus actually says and different things. Mm-hmm. So what has been the most impactful and eye-opening experience on your quest so far?
I mean, there have actually been a lot, and some of them have ended up forming the basis for sermon series, such as the Terms and Conditions mm-hmm. sermon series. That was a big one for me, learning what the law actually means and how God actually deals with sin. But I think if I had to pick one out, it would be the first one. And the first one was an experience I had in youth group. Mm-hmm. I love teenagers because they haven't learned the rules yet of what you're not supposed to ask in church. And so we were going through the Sermon on the Mount, and we got to the place where Jesus says, don't judge, and you will not be judged. And the measure you judge other people by will be used on you. Mm-hmm. And a kid said, well, does this mean that the way God treats us is affected by the way we treat other people? And I wanted to say no. I knew I was supposed to say no, not because at the church I was at, that I was told that I had to say no, but because that's just what I was taught. No, it's grace alone, and so it actually has nothing to do with anything you do. Your actions are irrelevant. But that's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus did say, judge not, and you will not be judged, and the measure you judge other people by will be used on you. And if the answer that I was going to give that kid would have completely contradicted what Jesus is saying. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, there's many places in the Gospels where Jesus repeats that basic idea, that you will be treated, the way you are treated by God is affected by the way you treat others. There's the parable of the unmerciful servant, and we did that in the discussion questions. That is the entire point of the parable. At the end, the master who has forgiven the servant, the main character, takes back the forgiveness and throws him in jail. And Jesus says, yeah, that's what God's going to do. I mean, it's in the Lord's Prayer when we say, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sinned against us. That's in the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And so to a certain extent, that has to be true. Otherwise, Jesus isn't right. And so that was kind of the first moment where I realized, no, I need to focus on what Jesus is actually saying, not what I've been told he's allowed to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we have reached the end of my on-topic questions, which means I have one off-topic question, which also means this is your last opportunity to comment any questions that you might have for Pastor Matt on the topic of last week's sermon. So my final question for you, the off-topic question, is maybe can you name one of your favorite dates that you've ever had with Casey?
Oh, interesting. A favorite date? Oh, I know. Switchfoot concert. Definitely Switchfoot concert. And I think she would say, if that counts as a date, I mean, it was the first thing we did, just the two of us, after our oldest child, James, was born. And we went up to Portland, and we'd actually bought the tickets before we even moved here. And we got to go up and eat at a restaurant, and then we had the VIP package, so we got to go up and meet Switchfoot. And it was really interesting because the you got a chance. I mean, we're in a line. It's not like we got to have dinner with them or something. But we had just a brief window to talk with them. And I said something silly that wasn't very cool, and I was just a blathering idiot because I love Switchfoot. And my wife started talking about how hard it was to be away from our kid. And they just lit up and they started talking, oh, yeah, man, like the first time you move them into their own room. We just started talking with our favorite rock band about being parents, and it was so cool. And then the concert was great. We were like 3 rows back. I mean, it was standing. There were no chairs. So we were the 3rd row of people standing back, and it was just amazing. So that was a great date because Casey and I really got to enjoy that together. It wasn't just like Switchfoot, but it was a date where we got to enjoy that together.
Sure.
So that would be the best, I think.
All right. Well, that concludes all of my questions that I have for Pastor Matt, and I have not seen any comments come in with any questions. So that then concludes our time together this afternoon.
Yeah, and we can't tell what it actually looks like for you guys and what you can hear. So I hope this worked. We obviously had some kind of broadcast issue with the connection. It's settled down now, but our connection on the internet was funky. So sorry about that.
The world of technology. We can't always trust it.
Nope.
So
nope.
Either way, we appreciate you being with us. We appreciate you being patient with us, and we appreciate you tuning in. So tune in next week as we are here at the same time, 3 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah,
I believe. And
we're going to be talking about our first female eyewitness. We're going to be talking about Joanna, who really stands in for 3 women, 4 women: Mary, Magdalene, Mary, mother of Joseph, and Susanna. That'll be really interesting because they have had a bigger impact on the Gospels than you may think.
Did she flip homes?
Did she flip homes?
Yeah. Sorry, Chip and Joanna Gaines.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, no, but she had multiple houses. She had estates and stuff. Yeah, she was probably the richest follower of Jesus.
Wow.
It's funny you make a reality TV show connection because the first time I preached on Joanna back when I was in Enterprise, I made a slide to show people the kind of person that Joanna was before she followed Jesus. So I made the Real Housewives of Tiberias.
Oh, wow. All right.
And so
you went that way with it, huh?
I thought about using it again this time, but I decided not to.
Yeah.
My video or my photo editing wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, again, tune in next week. We'll be talking about Joanna, and it should be a wonderful time. In the meantime, Pastor Matt is going to sign us off.
Stay healthy, stay hopeful, and go in peace to love and serve the Lord. See you later.